Notre Dame is chasing back-to-back trips to the national championship, but the schedule is a little bit tougher this time around. Do the Irish have what it takes to finally end the championship drought? Stick around to find out.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? Welcome in. This is Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Wojciak. I'm a Notre Dame alum, producer at Fox Sports, and I've been covering the Irish for the past 5 years. And I am thrilled to have you here with me on Tuesday, August 26th. That is the correct date. I may have gotten it wrong on yesterday's episode, so my bad there. But anyways, thank you for making this your first watch or listen of the day. Quick reminder to subscribe on YouTube or follow on your preferred podcast platform. We have a lot of great stuff coming your way the rest of the week and all season long. But the plan for today is pretty simple. I'm going to give you a game-by-game breakdown of Notre Dame's schedule, and then I will reveal my official record prediction and postseason outlook at the end. I've got a bunch of notes, takes, predictions, a lot to get into on today's show, so let's dive right in. We begin August 31st at Miami, Florida, Hard Rock Stadium, 7:30 p.m. Eastern this coming Sunday. I'm not going to spend too much time on this game in today's show because I'm going to have a full preview episode tomorrow that's going to be all about this game, and then I'm going to have some guests on later in this week to talk more about this matchup. But for today, let's break down the basics, okay? So Notre Dame is favored by 2.5. The over-under is 49.5 on FanDuel. A couple weeks ago, that number was 54.5. So that number has gone down significantly, and I think that it represents confidence in both teams' defenses, a much improved version, or at least that's what they expect in Miami. Mario Cristobal overhauled his entire defensive staff. He brought in Corey Heatherman from Minnesota and 6 defensive transfer starters. And last season was a big year for the Hurricanes. Cristobal finally got 10 wins in his third season at the helm, but they started off 9-0 and then completely collapsed down the stretch. They finished 1-3, missed the college football playoff, missed the ACC championship game with the number 1 overall pick at quarterback. So even though it was a step in the right direction, I do feel like they were a little bit disappointed in the way things ended. And on offense, do not get it twisted. They were absolutely elite last year. Big reason why Cam Ward ended up going as the number 1 overall draft pick. They were top 5 in nearly every single efficiency metric, but they've undergone big changes going into the season. They lost Cam Ward to the NFL, but they bring in Carson Beck, the transfer from Georgia, who steps in after suffering an elbow injury in his final game with the Georgia Bulldogs in the SEC championship. So he missed all of spring practice, but he has been back. He has been healthy with the team all summer. The strength of the offense today is the offensive line. They bring back 4 starters, plus they bring TCU's starting center over, and I think this could end up being the best offensive line that Notre Dame faces all season. But as you have talked about many times in the show, it usually takes offensive lines a couple games to really get going, really get dominant, even the best ones. Like think back to Notre Dame 2020. That ended up being an awesome offensive line. Took them a few games to get going as well. On defense, this is what held Miami back all last season. They allowed over 30 points a game to Power 4 opponents, and they finished 70th in scoring defense. Heatherman has kind of like a bend but don't break style, very focused on limiting explosive plays, very similar to Al Golden in that respect, but probably not as aggressive blitzing. And on this side of the ball, I think their strength is on the defensive line. They've got Ruben Bain, who could go in the first round of the upcoming NFL draft. He is going to be a threat on the outside. He's going to try to get after the quarterback early and often. But the big question about this defense is their secondary. They basically had to reload that entire group. They were horrible last season, like straight up awful. I remember watching the Louisville-Miami game last regular season. It was entertaining because there was no defense. It was a bunch of points. But there were so many times I was watching the Miami secondary like, what are they doing? They can't tackle. They can't cover. They can't do anything. Well, they're hoping that the new guys they brought in are able to do that. So I think this is going to be a very close game, probably low scoring. But I think the most important thing for Notre Dame, start fast. They have to get out early. They have to put points on the board because if they get down, that crowd gets going. CJ Carr might be forced to press and make some bad decisions. That's where things go wrong. But I think Notre Dame is going to have a good plan in this game. I like their chances. So, Miami, they play that game, and then the next week there's a bye. And I think the bye week in between the Miami and Texas A&M games are good for the team. Not so much for the fans. Like, that kind of sucks, if I'm being honest. We're going to wait 8 months for football. We're going to get a taste of it in a huge game week 1, and then we're going to have to take the next Saturday off, at least in terms of watching our favorite team. That's not going to be a whole lot of fun. but it should put Notre Dame in a better position when they take on Texas A&M on September 13th. The home opener, night game, South Bend, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. This is going to be an awesome environment. It looks like I'm going to this game now. Earlier, I thought I was only going to go to USC. I think I'm going to be at Texas A&M. So does that help Notre Dame's chances? Honestly, with my track record, probably not. We will get to that later, though. Notre Dame is favored by 7.5 in this game. The over-under, just like Miami, 49.5. For Texas A&M, I think year one under Mike Elko was pretty good overall. You know, they lost to Texas at home. They lost to Notre Dame in the season opener. But after they lost to Notre Dame, they rattled off 7 straight wins, and it looked like they were poised to potentially make the SEC championship. But then they kind of collapsed down the stretch. Similar to Miami, they ended up finishing 8-5. And Elko did not lean on the transfer portal this year like he did last year. Last year it made sense, right? He's completely overhauling the program after he took over. But now he has a bunch of returning guys, even though they did lose some big-time talent on the defensive line, 3 NFL draft picks in Shamar Stewart, Nick Scorton, and Shamark Turner. I remember last offseason, I spent so much time talking about those guys and how is Notre Dame going to try to block them with a bunch of young, inexperienced offensive linemen. And guess what? They did a great job, held them in check for most of the game, but this year, they lose out on those guys, but they bring back some other really talented players on that defense and on offense as well. They have a dual-threat quarterback, Marcel Reed. This is not the quarterback that Notre Dame faced last year. Connor Wigman is gone. He is now at Houston. And Marcel Reed is like Brandon Wimbush, but maybe a little bit better passer, but probably not by much if I'm just being honest with you. Like, he's a very, very talented runner. He came in that game against LSU last year, ran for 3 touchdowns. LSU had no idea what to do with him, but he just can't really pass the ball. He has major accuracy issues, so they're going to try to run the ball a lot. They also have a talented running back, Le'Veon Moss. He returns. He's a really good running back, and the offensive line brings back all 5 starters. So this team is not going to try to beat you through the air, although they do have one talented transfer receiver, Kevin Concepcion, who came over from NC State. Concepcion had 839 receiving yards and 71 catches in 2023 for the Wolfpack, but his production took a big hit in 2024. Still, very talented player, one of the most highly sought-after players in the transfer portal at that position. So that was a big win for them. I don't know how he's going to get the ball because I don't think Marcel Reed can really throw the ball downfield. Defense, like I said, lost those 3 elite defensive linemen, but they bring back Cassius Howell, who is basically their new star on the defensive line. And then Torian York is a really good linebacker, although he ended up making a really bad play on Jadarian Price's touchdown run last year. And I remember he was talking a lot of trash before that game, so I remember that play vividly, and I remember that it was him who took a bad angle, missed that tackle. Jadarian Price scores the first touchdown of the game. Their secondary, they bring back all their starters, but they were just okay last year. I think it's safe to say they're going to be a little bit better this year. But you look at this team, they are a top 15 team in terms of talent. They're not top 15 in terms of ranking. I think it's just going to be a matter of how good is Marcel Reed, what he can do with that offense. Like if they're just one-dimensional and you stop the run, I don't really think they're going to be able to do a whole lot. However, if Marcel Reed takes a big leap forward and these new wide receivers deliver for him, they're dangerous. I think the real question here is how is CJ Carr going to go up against a Mike Elko defense? Like this is going to be his first home game as the starting quarterback for Notre Dame. And you know that Mike Elko and his staff with one game of film, because like Miami doesn't have that. They're going off basically practice reports with CJ Carr. But Mike Elko and his staff are going to have one full game of film on CJ Carr. So I think that they are a very dangerous team. It's going to be a very tough start for the Irish this season. But then it gets easier on September 20th because Notre Dame hosts Purdue. And last year, the Irish beat them 66-7. That was a sign of things to come for Purdue. They ended up finishing 1-11. They lost 11 straight. Their coach, Ryan Walters, got fired, and they bring in Barry Odom from, was at Mizzou, also at UNLV, and he did a really good job in Vegas, turned that program around. Now he has to figure out what to do at Purdue, and this is essentially a brand new team. Odom brought in 54 transfers, plus 15 freshmen. Let me say that again. Purdue brought in 54 transfers, plus 15 freshmen. I could say key losses and go through some of the biggest departures, but it's everyone. And they bring back a bunch of guys, some interesting guys like a dual threat quarterback, Malachi Singleton. They did bring back Devin Mockabee, maybe the lone bright spot on their team last year. He had 687 rushing yards. And then their entire defense is a lot of guys that are like SEC transfers. They brought in some guys who like at one point in time were pretty highly rated recruits, but it hasn't really worked out for them that much in college up to this point. So they're trying, but overall, this is probably the worst team Notre Dame will face outside of maybe Stanford. So if Notre Dame starts off 2-0, this game could be just like a sleeper where Notre Dame doesn't take them that seriously, especially after what happened last year and the way that they just made them look like a freshman high school team. But if Notre Dame starts off 1-1 or maybe even 0-2, they might beat Purdue by 100 because they will take out all their anger on the poor Boilermakers, but I don't really see that happening. So after Purdue, Notre Dame heads to Fayetteville, Arkansas to take on the Razorbacks September 27th, noon Eastern. That's a big day of college football. You've got Ole Miss, LSU, Georgia, Alabama, and Oregon, Penn State at night. But the noon window is for Notre Dame and Arkansas. Sam Pittman, the head coach, is 30-31 in 5 years and just 14-28 in the SEC. He's 63 years old. He's probably nearing the end of his career, and the Razorbacks have the third toughest schedule in the country, so they're kind of stuck at this point in time. They lost 40 players after last season. They brought in 29, so it's kind of tough to say how good this team is really going to be. It really all comes down to their quarterback, Taylon Green. There's a lot to like about Taylon Green. He's 6'6", 230 pounds, dual threat guy, very dangerous when he's on, but he's also very erratic. He fumbled 12 times last year. He got sacked 32 times total. And when he played well, Arkansas played well. Jamie Uyeyama from Irish Sports Daily pointed this out, that when Green had a QBR over 80, Arkansas went 6-0. When he didn't do that, they went 1-6. So if Notre Dame can stop Taylon Green, which I don't think will be that hard because I don't think he has a ton of support around him, then they should be able to roll. But if Green is on that day, he's figuring things out, and Notre Dame just has difficulty stopping a dual threat quarterback, that could be tricky, right? I do think Notre Dame benefits from the fact that this game is at noon and not at night because I don't think the atmosphere is going to be quite as loud, although it will be loud. I know the Razorbacks fans have been waiting for this game for a long time. Notre Dame was supposed to play at Arkansas in 2020. It didn't happen because of the pandemic. And I look at this team, and I think back to what they did last year. They beat Tennessee at home. That was the game when Nico Iamaleava ran out of bounds when Tennessee was driving late in the game to try to either tie it or take the lead as time expires. So ran out. Arkansas won that game. That was a very weird game, but weird things can happen in Fayetteville if Notre Dame does not come ready to play. But still, I think Notre Dame will be ready to go. They'll be ready to take them on. And if they just shut down Green, they should be able to win easily. But you look at that first month, that's tricky. Two ranked opponents to start things off, a road game against an SEC opponent, and then Purdue, who they should beat by 100 again. But the first month could make or break the season. But if the Irish survive it, the middle stretch sets up very nicely. We got more breakdowns coming up next. Today's episode is presented by FanDuel. Today, August 26th, is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. So for this 24 hours, or however many hours are in the day left now that you are watching or listening to this on 26th, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week one even kicks off, this is your moment. I've already given out my picks before. I'm taking Patrick Mahomes plus 650 to win MVP, and I'm taking the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl plus 850. I know, boring pick, but you know what? Sometimes boring is right. You can also parlay your division winner dark horses. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. All right, we went a little long in that first segment, so we're going to move through these next few games a little bit quicker. October 4th, Notre Dame hosts Boise State, 3:30 p.m. Eastern. Right now, Notre Dame is favored by 16.5 on FanDuel, which seems a little bit high to me, to be honest with you. But Boise State is coming off a college football playoff appearance, the Group of 5 bid last year. Then they ended up getting handled by Penn State. Not like completely blown out. It was kind of a game at different points, but if you watch that, you know that Penn State was in control from the jump. But Boise State has got things going right now. I remember when I was growing up, those were the days of like Kellen Moore. They're running the Statue of Liberty to beat Oklahoma. They had the trick plays, the blue turf, all that stuff. Then they had some lean years, but now they're back. Spencer Danielson is 15-3 since taking over, and they went 12-2 last season, but they have not beaten a Power 4 team since 2019. So this trip for that program is massive. They are going to be ready. This is going to be a huge game for them, and they return a lot of production, except arguably their entire offense last season. A running back, Ashton Genty, top 10 pick who carried their offense last year, had nearly 2,600 yards. But they do have a good quarterback. I think because of Genty's success, Maddox Madsen didn't get a whole lot of recognition, but he had 3,000 passing yards, 23 touchdowns. Like, he's solid, right? But he's pretty risky out there. He makes some dangerous throws, so Notre Dame could take advantage of that. Their wide receiver and tight end room is pretty thin, although I do like their tight end, Matt Lauder. Their offensive line is experienced, and they have one guy on there, Cage Casey, who is a legit NFL prospect. But I just need to see what this offense looks like without Ashton Jeanty, because last year he was everything to that team. Their defense, they'll get after you, man. They led the nation in sacks last year with 55. They're very aggressive, but it is boom or bust. It is not bend but don't break. They go at you, but they did give up 29 pass plays of 30 or more yards. That was 131st in the country, and they were one of the worst tackling teams in the entire country. So they're going to send the house. They might forget about what's going on. It kind of reminds me of me in like EA CFP 26. But an X factor in this game could be special teams. They were really bad last year, like one of the worst in the entire country in special teams. They had bad coverage units, little returns. They have a new kicker, new punter. Like, they were just awful at that last year. So for Notre Dame, that's one of those instances where Marty Biaggi could really be a big part of the game plan and what his unit can do. They're always trying to figure out fakes, different things to do to kind of keep opponents on their toes. But if Boise State is that bad, rest assured, Notre Dame is going to try to take advantage of that. But big picture, I think they're dangerous because they're well coached, but they have not been a big-time program in years. So as long as Notre Dame shows up and they take this game seriously, which I think they will because they recognize that Boise State was just in the college football playoff. It's the Irish wear green game. They're going to take this one seriously, and I do think that they're going to win. Will they cover? I don't know. 16.5 is a lot, but I do expect them to be ready to play and get this win. All right, October 11th, Notre Dame hosts NC State, 3:30 p.m. Eastern. NC State is just kind of stuck right now. They are entering year 13 with Dave Doran as the head coach. They've been steady. You know, they've had some good years for sure. The Russell Wilson years were solid, obviously, but they've been middle of the pack ACC for a long time. The ACC is not a great conference. They're coming off a 6-7 season, and they have a sophomore quarterback, CJ Bailey, who has some good traits. He's got good size. He's dual threat, but he had 10 interceptions last year and 8 fumbles. They really only have one reliable weapon. It's the tight end, Justin Joly, because they lost Kevin Concepcion to Texas A&M. I just don't really know if this offense is going to be able to pass the ball at all. They bring in a new offensive coordinator, and then usually they'd be able to hang their hat on their defense, but that has taken a step back. They used to be a top 20 defense every single year under Tony Gibson, but they have fallen off big time. They've had to rebuild their secondary with transfers. I just don't think that they're a really good team. I understand that, like, people respect Dave Doran and what he's done in college football. I get that. He's been around a long time. They've always been pretty solid, but at this point, you know, entering year 13, they had a bad season last year. There's nothing about this roster that makes me think, oh, they're going to be significantly improved. I don't love their coordinator hires either. This game is in South Bend, so Notre Dame should roll. And by this point in the season, October 11th, Notre Dame should be hitting their stride. And this is exactly when they started hitting their stride in 2024. Because September was rocky, but then they had the bye week, and then they hammered Stanford. Now, granted, Stanford is horrible, but that was the first game where you watched it, and you're like, okay, I'm starting to see the signs. The offense is coming together. The defense is playing lights out. And then from that point on, they just put it on teams. And I think that's going to be what's happening at this point this season, which is perfect timing. Because on October 18th, the USC Trojans come to town, and it is a night game in South Bend, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. I cannot wait for this game. Notre Dame is favored by 10.5. The over-under is 53.5, and these two programs could not be going in more different directions. Lincoln Riley is 26-14 at USC. That's decent. It's identical to Clay Helton's pace, or nearly identical, I should say. Since Caleb Williams beat Notre Dame, essentially because it was mostly just him in that game in 2022, USC is just 15-13. Meanwhile, Notre Dame is 25-5. So Notre Dame is going up, USC is going down, and this is a very big year for Lincoln Riley. Like, they have to do something this year. Their win total right now is 7.5. So who knows if they're going to be able to even get that. But they do have some guys on offense that scare you. It's like your classic USC team. Jaden Mayava flashed in moments last year. I mean, hell, he was picking apart Notre Dame's defense more so than any quarterback had done all season last year. Now, part of that is because they have two really good wide receivers, like they always do. Mekhi Lemon and Jacoby Lane might be the best wide receiver duo Notre Dame sees all season long, but they don't really have any depth behind them. Their offensive line is pretty shaky. They just don't have a lot of depth because they haven't recruited that well. And yeah, they go in the portal every year, but they also lose a lot of guys. Like, they lost Deuce Robinson. They lost Zachariah Branch. I look at this offense and I think, yeah, they've got their stud playmakers. It's kind of like in 2021 when Drake London was like the only guy on offense. Now they have two guys. And still, even in that game, USC was able to move the ball a little bit. I feel like Riley's scheme is going to generate enough production for this offense to scare you. But it's going to be really interesting because they have a gauntlet at one point in their schedule. They're projected to face 6 top 20 defenses in a row, or 6 defenses that finished in the top 20 last year. So they're going to be tested, and USC was awful on the road last year, 1-4. They're going to have to go to Illinois and then go back to South Bend. It's a big reason why Lincoln Riley doesn't want to play this game anymore, but I think things set up really nicely for Notre Dame. The USC defense, they hired D'Anton Lynn before last season, young, up-and-coming defensive coordinator star. He was basically like the new Marcus Freeman, although I don't know if D'Anton Lynn is going to be a head coach. But D'Anton Lynn in one season at UCLA completely flipped that defense around. It did not happen as quickly at USC, but they did stabilize him. I mean, a couple years ago, they were Swiss cheese, right? Last year, they finished 56th in scoring defense, so a significant improvement for sure, but they also lost starters at every single level. 7 of the top 9 tacklers are gone, plus most of their secondary. And even though they were improved last year, there was nothing about that defense that really scared you. They still have the dangerous skill talent like they always do, but I just don't really think they have depth or a great offensive line or defensive line. So I expect Notre Dame to win this game big. I expect Marcus Freeman to exact some revenge on Chad Bowden for all the BS that he's been pulling this offseason ever since he left the program to join the Trojans. And it should be a lot of fun in South Bend. After Notre Dame plays USC, they have a bye week. I don't know why that is. I like when Notre Dame has a bye week before USC, extra time to prepare, but they're going to play USC. They have a bye week on October 25th, which means their next game is November 1st at Boston College. Bill O'Brien went 7-6 in year 1 as the head coach, a rare winning season for the Eagles, but they had things going in the right direction. If you watch any of Boston College last year, they had that win over Florida State when people thought they still might be good. Turned out they were terrible, but that felt like a big win in the moment for Bill O'Brien, and then they were just a tough out. Like, their quarterback is now at Florida State, ironically enough, and they lost some guys. They're going to start Alabama transfer Dylan Lonergan. But I just look at this team as a tricky team, a feisty team. I talked about this on the preseason award show yesterday with Luke Smith. They were my NIU award for just biggest trap game on the schedule because, in theory, Notre Dame could be coming off a big win over USC. They've got the bye. You're going into November later on in the regular season. So just given the nature of this game, the fact that it's on the road, I think it's going to be a noon game. I don't think it's going to be like a packed house. Probably going to be a lot of Notre Dame fans there. But just given the history of Notre Dame and Boston College, I could see this game being close in the second half, even though it shouldn't be. I mean, just think back in 2015 when Notre Dame played Boston College at Fenway Park. Notre Dame was super talented, and they should have ran that team off the field, but that was just an ugly game. Like, we've seen that a lot in the past between Notre Dame and Boston College. So that could happen in this game, or Notre Dame could be absolutely humming at this point, similar to how they did last year when, come November, like Army, ranked team, they just destroyed them from the jump. So there's 2 ways this could go, in my opinion. It could be really close and annoying, or Notre Dame could just be clicking on all cylinders, coming off that win over USC, and they could be set up for a huge November. So we get to this point in the season. It's November. Notre Dame could have things going in the right direction. They're right there in the playoff mix. We got the rankings coming out. So how are they going to finish the season? What's their record going to be? And what are they going to do in the college football playoff? That's coming up next. Today's episode is also brought to you by Rugiet. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it is time to meet Rugiet Ready. Rugiet Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rugiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. If traditional options haven't worked, Rugiet might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. You can even read real customer reviews on their site. It's helping a lot of people feel more confident and present in the moment. Head to Rugiet.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnCollege and use promo code LockedOnCollege for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rugiet website for full safety information. The next game on the docket, November 8th, Notre Dame hosts Navy at night. Why is this a night game? This is so dumb. Look, I understand night games are cool, but they should be sacred, right? Texas A&M absolutely should be a night game. USC should absolutely be a night game. Should Navy? No, because it's the Navy game, okay? And look, I understand that this Navy team could be one of their best teams in years. This should not be a night game. This is utterly ridiculous that it is. So that's my rant about the time of the game. Let's get into the actual details of the opponent. Brian Newberry has turned Navy around fast. He's done a really good job in a short amount of time. They went 5-7 in his first year in 2023. Notre Dame ran them off the field. And then they ran them off the field last year, but Navy finished 10-3, and they even beat Oklahoma in a bowl game. Big reason why they had so much success last season is their quarterback, Blake Horvath. I understand that the last time you watched Navy play might have been when Notre Dame played Navy, and Blake Horvath couldn't even hold on to the ball. Looked like he completely forgot how to play football. He was absolutely terrible in that game, save like 2 pretty decent runs. But he's a true dual threat. He can make some throws. He's not just your running quarterback that we expect from Navy every single year. And Drew Cronick, the offensive coordinator, has made a more modern triple option offense. I think they're going to be more creative and they're going to be more explosive in year 2. And I think just watching Blake Horvath play and how bad he was last year, he did hurt his hand early on in that game. I think he's going to have a point to prove in this game. Not that he's going to be carving up the Notre Dame defense or anything, but I do expect him to play much better than he did a year ago. Now, their defense has a bunch of question marks. They were pretty solid last year, but they lost pretty much all their top playmakers, if I'm being honest. Their best pass rusher, both starting linebackers, their top defensive backs. So this group looks like a big question mark to me, even though they bring back a couple of experienced guys on the defensive line. And I think when you look at this game as a whole, Navy should be better than they were last year, and they were pretty good last year. But considering how Notre Dame just thoroughly dominated them in that game, I don't expect this to be much of a fight. At this point in the season, Notre Dame should be rolling. This game should be over by halftime, or maybe the third quarter at the latest, right? I understand Navy's got some talent, but last year I think we saw the talent disparity on display, and Notre Dame had a point to prove in that game. I mean, hell, some people were picking Navy to beat Notre Dame. I just did not understand that whatsoever. Notre Dame drilled them. They're probably going to drill them again this year. Moving on to November 15th, Notre Dame heads to Pitt to take on Pat Narduzzi and the boys. Pitt is the definition of mid under Pat Narduzzi. And I would say no offense to Pat Narduzzi, but I'm not going to say that because I'm not a huge fan of Pat. And that's okay because Pat hates Notre Dame and probably me by proxy because I went there. But it's true. Last year, they started off pretty well. They started off 7-0. Then they lost 6 straight. So things aren't going great. On offense, they continue to be terrible. They do bring in Alabama transfer Eli Holstein. He's got some arm talent, was a top recruit once upon a time, but didn't work out at Alabama. Narduzzi says he can fix him. He also thought he could fix Phil Dracovic. Didn't really work out there. He ended up playing tight end. They do have a good running back, though. Desmond Reed, he's the centerpiece. He's their offense. He can do a lot of different things. Really good running back. Can make some catches out of the backfield as well. First team All-ACC last year. So Notre Dame is going to have to watch out for him, but their offensive line doesn't expect to be that great. So I don't think they'll be able to move the ball on offense. Defense historically has been Pat Narduzzi's strength. He was a defensive coordinator for Michigan State when they were really rolling over a decade ago now, but they did not really produce at the level that you would expect last season. They were really, really good against the run, but they gave up way too many explosive pass plays. They were 121st in the country in pass plays of over 20 or more yards. So Notre Dame is probably going to take some shots in this game. They do have 2 really good linebackers, though. Kyle Lewis and Rasheem Biles. They might be the best linebackers that the Irish face all season long. They are disruptive. They can attack, but they can also play in coverage as well. They have question marks on the defensive line. They have question marks in the secondary, but the middle of that defense is going to be solid. So there is a world where this game is scrappy. Pitt just hates Notre Dame so much, and in the past too, Notre Dame has really struggled to just put it on Pitt, but once they just buried them in 2020, I think that really sent a message, and they hammered them again in 2023. So I don't really think this is going to be that tough a game. Maybe the defense slows Notre Dame's offense down at the beginning of the game, but again, Notre Dame should be able to thoroughly beat Pat Narduzzi, and I would take a lot of enjoyment in that. All right, November 22nd, Senior Day. Notre Dame hosts Syracuse. Steve Angeli, 3:30 p.m. Eastern, makes his return to South Bend. Fran Brown, one of the most exciting young coaches in the game right now, was like a boost of energy to that program last year. They went 10-4. They upset Miami, which was a huge win for the program. They had Kyle McCord slinging it all over the yard, but they had a very easy schedule. Miami was really their only tough game. They had a lot of one-score wins, and this year their schedule is pretty brutal for an ACC team. So they open up on the road against Tennessee. They play at Clemson, who's top 5. Duke at home, and Duke is pretty decent. They go at SMU, who's ranked. Home against Pitt. They play at Georgia Tech. Haynes King and that program are also on the rise. Home against Bill Belichick's Tar Heels. And then they go at Miami and then Notre Dame. So there's a very good chance by this point in the season, Syracuse is just dead in the water. I hope that Steve Angeli has some success with the program. I just don't think that they're going to be nearly as good on offense this year. Their top 3 wide receivers are gone. Their star tight end is gone. Their lead running back is gone. And they lost 6 offensive linemen. So they have to completely rebuild on that side of the ball. And even though they have one of the best offensive coordinators in the country in Jeff Nixon, I just don't think they're going to be nearly as good this year. They weren't very good on defense last year. They lost their best pass rusher as well. So I think it's going to be more of a reset year for Syracuse. Long term, I think Fran Brown has got them in a really good place. They're on a good trajectory. But when you have that schedule and you have to replace that amount of production, it's just going to be really hard no matter who you are, let alone Syracuse. Also, Notre Dame has been really good on senior day. They come to play. They want to send their seniors off on a high note. I expect that to happen again against Syracuse. All right, November 29th, Notre Dame plays on the road at Stanford. Here's the scouting report. They stink. They're awful. They lost to Hawaii 23-20 in week 0. They are at rock bottom. They have had 20 total wins in 6 years, 4 straight 3-9 seasons. Troy Taylor was fired this offseason amid a scandal. They bring in Frank Reich as the interim coach. Andrew Luck is doing everything he possibly can as the general manager to get that place going in the right direction, but it is not going to start this year. There's a chance they go like 1-11. This could be like Purdue level bad. So, yeah, Notre Dame is going to go there. They're going to beat up on the Cardinal in front of like 20 people in the crowd, and that's going to close out the regular season. So, we've gone through all the games. What's their record going to be? Last year, I predicted Notre Dame would go undefeated in the regular season and then ultimately lose in the college football playoff semifinals. They went 11-1 in the regular season, so I was close, and they made it all the way to the national championship. So I actually undersold them by a game. Now, what's going to happen this year? I think Notre Dame is going to split the first 2 games. I know, don't love it. They're favored in both those games, and by the end of the year, I expect them to be the better team in each of these matchups, but I don't expect the Notre Dame team that we see in September, specifically early September, to be the team that we see at the end of the year, very similar to last year. And I think that breaking in a new quarterback against this schedule is an extremely tough ask. But I'm not just going to say they're going to split and then not put my name on one of these games, right? So I have to pick which game they're going to lose. I don't think that Miami has a good enough defense to truly rattle Carr. I just think that Notre Dame is way more of a sure thing than Miami in that one. So I think they're going to go on the road, beat Miami in week 1, and I think they're actually going to lose to Texas A&M. That's going to be a very difficult game. Even though South Bend is going to be rocking, I just believe that Mike Elko and the Texas A&M staff are going to want to get revenge for last year. They're going to create a game plan that baits Carr into making some really unfortunate mistakes that cost them in a close game. Texas A&M has a ton of talent. They have questions for sure, but when you think back to how did Notre Dame lose to Northern Illinois last year? Northern Illinois ran the ball really well. There's a good chance that Texas A&M is going to be able to run the ball with Reed and Moss and that offensive line. So that could be an issue. And really, the nail in the coffin was Riley Leonard's interception, even though they ended up moving down the field and kicking the game-winning field goal. Like, the interception alone was not the end of the game, but it set up the go-ahead field goal. And I do think that C.J. Carr is going to end up being a really good quarterback. But it's going to be rocky to start because, of course, it is. He's a redshirt freshman who's never played before, and he has to play a top 10 team on the road in week 1 and then play one of the best defensive minds in college football in his second game as a starter. So it's going to be up and down. I still think he's going to have moments of brilliance. even early on in these games. But if they can start out 1-1 and they could survive the rest of September, which I think they will, and they get to USC with just one loss, they're going to be in great shape. And long term, I believe CJ Carr is going to be a great quarterback, but like most young quarterbacks, he's going to have some inconsistency early on. We know that interceptions have been an issue in practice. I think some of that is going to translate to the games. He just doesn't have the luxury of easing into it. He's going to be thrown into the fire right away. So September could be rocky. I'm not worried at all about the defense, though. The offense has two major question marks. Carr's growing pains, and can the offensive line that we expect will be great eventually, will they be great in week one? Usually it takes offensive lines a couple of games to gel. So I think because of that, they're going to start off 1-1. They're going to get through September, going to be some close games, but then that USC game is going to come around. And I think that is going to be the moment where the season really turns. I think they're going to go out there. I think they're going to hammer the Trojans. And from that point on, they're going to start firing on all cylinders, and they're going to control the second half of the schedule. There might be one game against Boston College that's like a little tricky, but the season is so front-loaded that Notre Dame just needs to survive until mid-October with one loss. It doesn't have to be pretty. If they finish 11-1 with this schedule, they could absolutely be ranked 5th, maybe even earn a bye, but we'll see. So that's my official record prediction. 11-1, loss to Texas A&M, 5th seed in the college football playoff. So what's going to happen in the CFP? Well, if they're the 5th seed, they're going to have a home game week 1, which would be absolutely awesome because that game against Indiana was probably the most fun I've ever had in Notre Dame Stadium. That would be electric. So they'll probably beat up on some group of 5 team or some champ from a Big 12 or ACC. They're going to win that game. Then they're going to move on. I think they're going to face the 4 seed. That could be a rematch against Penn State, Ohio State, maybe even Georgia. But my pick is Clemson. I think Clemson's going to win the ACC. They are going to be the 4 seed. And I like the Irish to beat Clemson in advance to the college football playoff semifinal against Texas. Think about how fun that would be. Arch Manning going up against Notre Dame's elite secondary. That would be so fun to watch. But I think this is where it ends for Notre Dame. Unfortunately, I think that Texas has enough talent to match Notre Dame, and Arch would win the quarterback battle over CJ Carr, even though by this point in time, I think CJ Carr is going to be playing much better. And I just think that when you get to this point in the season, Notre Dame is absolutely a top 4 team in the country. They have exactly what it takes to make it to the semis, and I think it's going to be a very close game. It's going to be a loss, which obviously would not be fun in the moment. But part of my thinking here is last year, when they made it to the college football playoff semifinal. They had that great comeback. They beat Penn State. But when you're playing a game that is that close, like one bounce goes your way could decide the game. Think about that drive at the end of first half, right? Steve Angeli comes in for Riley Leonard. He starts moving the ball. They go right down the field. He gets sacked. He fumbles the ball. And that ball is going right into Abdul Carter's hands. But he had hurt his shoulder, so he couldn't lift it up enough to get the ball and secure the possession. If he did, that game's probably over. Penn State is up 10-0. They go into the second half. Notre Dame has no momentum. But instead, Abdul Carter couldn't lift his arm. Billy Stroud is able to jump on it probably 1 second late. Notre Dame is able to finish that drive off with a field goal. They end up winning that game. Like, that moment seems so inconsequential, but I genuinely think that play could have turned the game around. Like, if Penn State recovers it, I think they end up winning that game. So when you get into this point, will you get all the bounces go your way? I think against Texas, they won't. So overall, that would mean a 13-2 finish with the first-year starting quarterback. I would call that a success. It would feature some big-time wins. It would set the stage for the future and show that they are just one step away. And the reason I'm not taking them to win it all is because I just don't believe that CJ Carr is going to be good enough as a redshirt freshman. I think he is going to be great. And I understand that some redshirt freshman quarterbacks have been really good in college football, like CJ Stroud, like Bryce Young, like Johnny Manziel, who won the Heisman. But even Johnny Manziel, that year he won the Heisman, they lost to Florida early on in the year, and he did not look anything like the Johnny Manziel we eventually saw him become later on in the season. Jameis Winston, Heisman Trophy winner, national champion as a redshirt freshman. I think Carr is going to need a little bit more time to develop into a great quarterback, unlike those guys. Those guys are the outliers, right? Like, everyone is super high on Cade Klubnik right now. He could be the number 1 overall pick in next year's draft. At one point, Cade Klubnik was the CJ Carr. He was the 5-star recruit. Clemson needed to hand him the keys. He was going to be the next Trevor Lawrence, right? And it took him some time. But now he's really, really good. So I think long-term, CJ Carr is going to be awesome. I just think that as a first-year starter, redshirt freshman with some questions about his turnovers, like, thinking that he's going to go 16-0 and win a national championship, that just seems a little bit far-fetched to me today. I think 2026 is the year that Notre Dame finally breaks through with year 2 under Carr, potentially the entire offensive line back. Even though they lose Jeremiah Love, they're going to have Leonard Moore as a junior, all kinds of really exciting stuff. So I think next year is the year where they are set up to win the national championship. This year, I think they come up just short, but they'll be knocking on the door again. And unlike the last time that Notre Dame made it to the national championship back in 2012, and they followed that up with an 8-4 season, Notre Dame is now built to sustain success. I think another deep playoff run is in the cards. They're going to be right there. They have what it takes to make it to that point in time. Once they're there, you need some bounces to go your way, and I just think that this year they're going to come up short against Texas, but overall, really, really excited about this year. If they make it back to the college football playoff semifinal, this is going to be a super fun season, and I can't wait. We are less than a week away, so we have a lot more to talk about in the days to come. But that is going to wrap it up for the 2025 season preview show. Before you head out, please subscribe on YouTube or wherever you are listening to the podcast. Also wanted to remind you to submit your mailbag questions to be featured on Friday's show. You could drop them in the YouTube comments or hit me up on X at LockedOnIrish or on Instagram at LockedOnIrishPod. I'm going to be back here tomorrow. More preview content. My full Miami preview will be out tomorrow morning. Stay tuned for that. It's going to be a lot of fun. Deep dive into the Hurricanes. I'll see you then.